Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Panty Personals, or as my mother likes to call it, a private audience with the Queen. And these days, of course, I am very, very grateful to be back at the day job as Dublin's most glamorous pub landlady in rainbow-coloured Capel Street. But I still have time for a chat with today's guest, who's going to be bringing a very summery vibe and sound to the show. And to be honest, if I didn't have the time, I'd still have to find it, or else risk being stripped of my Mayo citizenship, because today's guest is fellow Mayo woman and fellow cat lover Elaine May, queen of the fantastic funky dance tracks, and someone who, like me, someone whose whole life was changed, for richer or for poorer, by the 2015 marriage equality referendum, because we were both married 2 years ago. Elaine's been performing for over 10 years now. Some of you will know her from her days with electronic band La Galaxie, and others will know her from her collaborations with people like Soleil and Sorka Richardson. And more recently, she's been partnering with some other amazing female artists, for example with May Kay on the track No Forever, which was out earlier this year, and currently on the very hot track Still Feel with Alva Reddy. And Alva is here with us today and will be in later to do that track for us. But Elaine's also well known for standing up for gender equality and gay rights, which makes it slightly weird to me that we're not already best friends forever. Because it's true, Elaine, we haven't really crossed paths before, have we?
No. I'm sure we've brushed shoulders, more than likely.
I mean,
it's kind of unavoidable.
Pretty small, so I'm absolutely sure we have. But it does seem a little bit weird that you're from Mayo. I'm from Mayo. You've been doing some really interesting work in the sort of women's rights and gay rights area and all this stuff. It just feels like, God, it's so weird that we haven't properly connected before. So I'm very glad to have this opportunity to. Where Mayo are you from?
I'm from Charlestown. I actually grew up in a really small, it's not a village, it was just like a tiny kind of rural place called Tullinahoe.
Like a townland.
Yeah, like a townland, like a house here and then a house a mile away, that kind of thing.
Farmers?
Yeah, 100%, yeah. And I lived there until I was 12 and then my parents split up. So we moved to Kilkelly, which was it's a tiny little town, but it felt like moving to a serious metropolis after where I'd grown up. And then we moved again then to Charlestown, I think when I was about 16 or something like that.
Oh, Kilkelly, where's that?
Kilkelly's just outside the airport as well. It's really close to Swinford, close to Charlestown. So all around the same kind of neck of the woods.
And so the farming family, my dad was the local vet, so Mayo farmers was my growing up.
Yeah.
So were you like a couple of sheep, a couple of cows, that kind of thing?
Exactly, yeah. Like a few ducklings, a few hens. Small kind of little farm, but a pretty lovely place to grow up. I feel like the country calls me now, that I live in Dublin. I'm just like yesterday we were out kind of in Wicklow and it was just like, oh my God, it's so nice to be out among the grass and the fields again, Well,
it's kind of funny because in some ways I often think with country people that, well, for example, I was recently just hanging out with Imelda May doing a thing there the other day, and we were laughing because she's from Deepest Liberties, and she now lives in very rural England, and that's where she really gets her energy and where she feels great at the moment.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, I'm from Deepest Bog, and I just always want to be smack in the middle of everything. And sometimes I feel like I don't care if I never see a tree again. I grew up with them. But then when I go back to Mayo, I am so glad that I have that country background because I understand all of that stuff. And so I feel transplants like us, we get to understand both sides of that coin.
Yeah.
Whereas I think city people will never understand the country.
Yeah, I mean, jumping off hay bales and, taking the tractor out and stuff like that. It was great. I really loved growing up on a farm and I'm glad that it kind of happened that way. But similarly to you, I really love being in the city and there's a big part of me that's just kind of I'm not willing to give that up either,
Yeah.
But my wife's from Donegal, so the two of us have all of the excuses in the world to leave the city and go to more rural areas, so we're lucky in that way.
Your wife, Roisin,
yes.
the northern pronunciation.
Thanks very much. Yeah, perfect. 10 points.
And so my growing up, I feel, was like super idyllic up to a certain point, whatever. But my growing up was actually very different than yours in the sense that I'm from a family of 6 kids. It's always noisy, always, a lot of us running around, all the neighbors' kids in as well, because we were on the edge of a town. Whereas you're an only child.
Yep.
And until you were 12, certainly you were literally in the middle of nothing.
Yep.
So was that lonely?
Funny that you say that, because I actually thought the expression was lonely child until I was about in my early 20s. I was like, yeah, I'm a lonely child.
Oh my God, that is kind of beautiful. Yeah.
I've since learned that it's only child. But yeah, I mean, it was in certain ways, but I was actually very lucky because I have lots of cousins, and my cousins used to come and visit all the time, and we were super close.
But they live nearby, or?
Well, like nearby in country terms, like half an hour away, kind of.
Okay. Yeah, that is nearby.
Yeah, so I saw them pretty frequently, but I definitely would have been out on the farm, talking to myself and chatting with the animals and stuff like that. But I kind of loved that. And yeah, it was a bit lonely at times, but I think in general, I wouldn't change it or anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was times when I was a kid where I would have been thrilled to be an only child.
Well, this is it. Yeah,
but of
exactly.
course, no, I'm so glad that I come from a big noisy family or whatever.
Yeah.
And, my sort of projection now onto this story is that you're out in the fields amongst the trees and the cows and all of that, and you're this artistic kid, imagination running wild and all of that stuff. Is that the case? Do you think that, added to your being an artistic person?
I do, because I feel like I had to entertain myself in lots of ways. And whenever there were people around, I was that annoying kid that wanted to do a show or something, absolutely atrocious stuff, I'd say. And, I feel like it kind of made me have to just figure out ways to make fun and to create things and stuff like that. And I did get into music from a younger age, kind of sang in a choir, and then when I was kind of a teenager I started playing guitar and stuff like that. So I feel
was there music in the family?
My mum's musical, and my mum's side of the house would be quite musical. My mum's a really good singer, and had a strong love for music that specifically a love for ABBA that has just been transplanted onto me. So music was definitely around and something that I kind of had an interest in from a younger age.
And so were your parents happy for you to pursue music?
Yeah.
There was never any...
No, but
job vibe.
Well, I mean, I did go to college and I did arts, and I work in a full-time job separate to music as well. So I'm kind of balancing those two things. But my mum would always have been very supportive of anything that I wanted to do. My mum was a serious cheerleader. So yeah, I think I could have told her anything and she would have been happy enough. But I had to go to college. There was no kind of qualms about that.
But I always imagine that is part of the pressure of being an only child, where in a way you have to fulfill all of the expectations that your parents might have. Whereas I think there's 6 of you, and especially if you're number 5 of 6, a lot of the pressure's been taken off by the older ones, Yeah, and I never felt that way, to be honest. My mum was always really supportive of me. And even when I kind of think about when I was younger and I really wanted to wear quite specific things, kids around my age were kind of wearing more girly clothes and stuff, and I was just I'm literally not wearing that. And she was super supportive of, she was just whatever you're comfortable in, whatever you feel happy in. I don't think that would have necessarily been the, across the board at that time when I was growing up. So it was pretty cool that she kind of, was supportive in that way. Now, and of course, you are quite a bit younger than me, but I would say you're sort of the generation after me, kind of. So when I was growing up in Mayo, to me, queerness was, it didn't even enter the picture frame.
Yeah.
It just didn't exist. And so even coming to any sort of self-discovery about who I was, whatever, was quite relatively late in life compared to kids nowadays, and a sort of a roundabout journey and all of that stuff. Now, with you, was your experience similar or different? I mean, you were growing up in the internet age?
Yeah, I actually got, I remember getting... You remember Gateway? They were one of the first computers that kind of came out around the time. And you could order it, and it came in a big box, and I built the computer at home, and we had the dial-up thing. So it was
oh my God, you're so lesbian.
I know, yeah.
Building your own computer at
well,
home with Charles
I'm overselling it now, in fairness. It was heavily instructed. But yeah, it was back in the day when it was mum would be on the phone and she'd pick it up and she'd hear me on the internet and have to kind of bump me off. So yeah, there was the internet, but it wasn't anything like what we... Yeah, and it wouldn't have been anything that played a part in my sexuality or like anything to do with that. But I think I did start to realize when I was probably like maybe 14, 15 or something like that. So I'd say it was similar. We had a similar experience, but different also, because I think for me, it wasn't really like, I was never going to be like out at that age. Do you know what I mean? Like that wasn't a thing that was really going to be possible. But at the same time, I did confide in some friends and had supportive friends who kind of knew, and, you know, and I had that support as I was coming up to kind of like finishing school and leaving to go to college and stuff.
So like you were out to some friends, quietly out to some friends in school in Charlestown.
Yeah.
You see, even that is quite a big change, in the intervening years from when I was that age.
Yeah, I imagine so, for sure. And like that was a huge support for me, because I was very much like, I knew who I was, and I was very like, you know, I want to get to college, I want to meet people like me, like all of that kind of stuff. So having people that I could talk to and confide in and all of that, I think was a huge thing for me at that age.
But that does now sort of mark you out to me, though, as someone who really knows their own mind, because that is still, you know, and in the context of the time, that was very self-aware of you and determined of you, I think I would say too.
I think I was just a bit gay, you know, I couldn't ignore it. Like, you know, I even remember like any kind of thing on TV or anything, I just wanted to kind of see myself reflected, you know. And I remember around that time it was like Queer as Folk came out, which was like so controversial and like, you know, huge at the time. And I was just like, wow, this is like, people exist like this somewhere, you know, like,
not many lesbians in it though. Like, did that matter to you?
Oh yeah, definitely. But I think at that time, any kind of representation was good to see. But I remember we used to kind of get the bus to Galway to go shopping and stuff like that. And I used to get the bus to Galway. I'd go into Charlie Byrne's bookshop and they had GCN in there. So when I was a teenager, and it was like around the back of the door, and I swear to God, I'd be walking down that street and my heart would be like pounding out of my chest, because I was like, just go in, just do it really quickly, just grab it, like it'll be totally fine, and like go in, get it. But then it was like a total lifeline, because I was like, there's like events and there's groups and like these people are like living their lives. So I was just like super excited to kind of get to college and meet some kind of people like myself, you know. And
so where was college?
Galway.
Okay. And like, I jokingly often refer to Galway as like the lesbian city, you know, the outdoorsiness, the orange jumpers and all the nice coffee shops. So what year were you going to college?
2001, I think. Around 2001, yeah.
And so at that stage, was there like an active, vibrant, you know, gay queer club or whatever?
Yeah. So I remember going to the open day with all the societies and stuff. And Pluto was what the gay society was called back in the day. And I was just kind of like... Pluto, yeah. People like us together and out.
That's kind of cute.
I know. I think it's changed. It changed to Gigsock Gay in Galway, I think, you know, after that. But yeah, Pluto back in the day, and you know, I sought them out for sure. And then I remember they did this amazing thing, which was just like huge for someone like me who was just like very anxious and quite nervous about meeting people and moving into that space. But they did this thing called an icebreaker, where someone from the organisation came and they met you before and then took you along to the meeting. And I
did that in
Dublin. Class, that's so cool.
Like when I was 17, 18, whatever, in college, I went to an icebreakers meeting in a room in the Clarence Hotel.
Oh, wow.
Long before it was bought over by U2. Was cool. And that was exactly that. And it was a lifesaver. They took us to a gay bar afterwards.
Yeah.
And that was it. My life changed.
Yeah, exactly. I was just like, oh my God, amazing. And like the guy who met me, and he was just so kind and warm and open. And it's funny because I just remember being like, wow, this is a gay man. Like, you know, just like unbelievable. And yeah, I just felt like my world really opened up then when I went to college there.
That's good to know. And of course, that is where you met Roisin, is it?
It is, yeah. We actually met through the Gay Society. There you go. I was in second year, she was in first year. So we met at an event. We actually went down to Strano at the time.
Oh, yes, I remember Strano's.
Yeah, good spot. And they had karaoke on the night that we met. So we all did that. And she won karaoke, which she still slags me about to this day, because I'm just like very competitive and raging, essentially, that she bet me.
You're I sing what your lips want. They give.
And we were together for like a very short period of time then, but we stayed friends for a very long time. And then we got back together and we got married in 2018 up in Donegal.
And mean what you say.
That is so cute. Was she your first girlfriend?
Was she my first girlfriend? I think she was, yeah. God, she's going to kill me now. We were like together for, like, it was very short lived, but we remained good friends.
And at the time, were you the cool girl at karaoke because you were already into your music?
I was kind of into music at the time. I was like playing in bands and stuff like that, but I hadn't kind of started doing my own solo stuff. That took a lot longer.
And what kind of bands are you playing in?
Played in a metal band, I played in a jazz kind of band, blues band. But it took me quite a while to actually kind of come to, you know, my own solo music and what I kind of wanted to do, or what I'm doing now and have been for the last like 10 years or whatever.
And so were you the classic college music aficionado kid, like at home, lying in your bed listening to Alanis Morissette and living your life?
Yeah, I loved Alanis Morissette. You nailed that one right on the head.
Were you sort of ignoring in some ways maybe some of your studies in order to live your student muso life?
I think at that time I was really, like, I'm a Virgo and I'm a bit of a realist, like, and I actually was very much like, well, you know, you can't be like, you're either like super famous and you're making like a mint from your music and you're like touring around the world, or you're not in music. You're just kind of doing it as a pastime or whatever. I didn't really see a route to music as a career at that age, you know, and especially not in like the music that I'm doing right now. So it took me a lot longer to kind of come back to it later on in my 20s. You know, I was actually going out with a girl that I met in Australia, and she really kind of got me back into music because she was just kind of like, you're really good, and like, you know, why aren't you doing anything with it? And I was just like, oh, it's like, what's the point? Like, you know, it doesn't matter and it's really hard, blah, blah. And she was just like, that's kind of silly, like, and you should just try. And I was in Australia at the time, and then when I came back from Australia, I started to make moves to get back into doing something myself properly.
I mean, in a way, so many of the musicians that I talk to these days have similar kind of stories, and the way the music industry has changed so much, it's become like all these cottage industries, and you have to release your own music and do everything yourself. And that sort of old fantasy of playing your gig in some pub and then somebody spots you for a record company, all that, it doesn't really happen like that anymore. And so many people, they're balancing, you know, the day job with their music. And I'm always amazed that they keep at it and make a career in music by sheer determination in a way, because you're unable to not.
I know,
what I mean?
and that's literally how I am now. I can't not do it. Like, I just love it so much. It's like such an outlet for me, and definitely over the last couple of years with everything that's happened, it gave me more time to like write and kind of come up with new stuff and collaborate with some incredible artists and stuff like that. So I just can't not do it. Like, it's just kind of built into me now, you know.
But so when you were first getting into it, you were doing the singer-songwriter route, Alanis.
Yeah,
you were being Alanis, and but of course that has changed, and you're now very much into electronic music. And where did that change happen, or how did that change happen?
Very, very slowly, and like, you know, that's one thing that I would love if I had kind of gotten into the electronic side of things earlier. But you know, for me, it was kind of a journey, and I think the entry point for me into music was like, this is what, you know, as a singer-songwriter, it's like, okay, I'll just play the guitar, and that's kind of what is available to me almost, you know, this is the space that makes sense. But then I bought a loop pedal, and that was like definitely my entry point into experimentation, because I was like, there's so much stuff that you can do now. I can like layer, I can like make it much more interesting live and stuff like that.
She took my hand, I felt as I slipped away from myself to where she could.
And then I was living in Galway at the time, and there was an artist there, a guy called Will O'Connor, who was doing really interesting stuff with Ableton, like live looping. And we met, and he was just like, I can show you like how to use Ableton and kind of get you going with like doing that kind of loop stuff, which I was like, amazing.
I'm Ableton and live looping. That's, I mean, I'm think I know what you mean. That's when like you go doop and then it goes doop and then you add something else and you're doing it on stage and yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like this music production software, but it's really I would say like, you know, kind of user friendly and fun, especially for like live looping stuff, which is what I was doing at the time. And then that really just set me on this path of like getting more into kind of electronic music and production and stuff like that.
Well, see, this is all very interesting to me because I mean, I'm going to talk to you later a bit about the sort of the stuff you're doing with the women in the industry, but from your own personal point of view, it's interesting to me that in the beginning you felt the singer-songwriter me guitar route was the only one that was open to you, because it is true even now that I think a lot of women assume that because that is what is presented as how a woman accesses the music industry in a way. And I think it is still unusual and rare to see a woman taking control of the means of production. Marx would love you. But you know what I mean? And being the producer, the engineer, the person who's pushing all the buttons and all of that, that is still presented as a very male thing to be doing. So it is interesting to me that your journey has gone from this singer-songwriter lady with a guitar to being the person at the desk. Was that conscious, or it's just what you felt more comfortable evolving into?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, like, you know, now that I'm kind of more on the other side of it a little bit, I realise that it's the music that I really love. I really love electronic music. I like producing stuff. I find it really fun. I find it the way that I can kind of write and create. So like it makes sense. But I probably wouldn't have said that 10 years ago because I didn't really know that that was like an option. So it's definitely a bit of both. But yeah, I feel like, you know, when I was kind of coming to it, I just didn't see a route into, I was just like, this is what I'll play the guitar. It's what I know. It's what I was taught. It's what I kind of had the option of learning. So like, this is what I'll do. I think like even in the, you know, probably 10 years since I started that journey, I think things have changed a lot because there are a lot more opportunities kind of coming up now for younger people and women to kind of get into that side of the music industry, which I think is really interesting and is really good to see. And like I'm part of Key Change, which is something that I was selected for in 2020, which is it's essentially a network of women and an EU initiative that are striving to get, you know, gender equality within the music industry. And like being part of that network just totally opened my eyes because like I met like the first female mastering engineer, never met one before, like women working in all kind of strands of the industry that I had never even kind of just like, you know, recognized. So that was really incredible. And I think, you know, initiatives like that will help hopefully in time for women at a younger age to get into those industries. Because for me, certainly, I didn't feel like that opportunity was there when I was in my 20s, and it took me longer to kind of get into it, you know.
Well, it's funny because I didn't know anything about Key Change until I was reading about you. And it's a European initiative, which seems, you know, particularly powerful to me in a way to be doing it on that scale. And basically they're trying to sort of like get festivals and stuff to sign up to have, you know, 50-50 you know, gender divide on their lineup and all of that.
Yeah, and organizations as well. Yeah.
And it's funny because then there are the sort of more local organizations here doing similar work.
Yeah.
And well, so you've personally benefited from being involved in that already.
Yeah, massively. Like I kind of didn't really realize the power of network, I think, until like this kind of happened in 2020. And the other thing that happened in 2020 was Irish Women in Harmony, which was incredible as well, like spearheaded by Ruth Ann, who brought all these women together in Ireland. And, you know, essentially it was to do a cover and raise money for Safe Ireland.
Of the Cranberries' Dream.
Correct, yeah.
And all my dreams, it's never quite as it seems. Never quite as it seems.
But it actually became a network and a movement, and this just like unbelievably lively WhatsApp group of women who are just chatting and supporting each other, and it's been incredible. Like,
'Cause it came from you.
to see things like that forming, I think, like, you know, they're just having such a positive impact, because it's kind of like bringing to the fore, you know, that there are all these women who are working in the industry, that there are so many incredible women creating music here in Ireland and, you know, obviously abroad, that need to be recognised and have that kind of opportunity to shine as well.
Yeah, and it's funny, I sort of see the influence of all of these things, even if sometimes I think they're not even conscious influences, because so I see so many now really great women artists, and loads of them, for example, were in the Dreams thing.
Yeah.
Just collaborating with each other all the time now, you know, Loa and Emma Langford and yourself and May Kay and Sorga Richardson, and it feels to me that there is a sort of a new upsurge in women collaborating with other women, and even online then I can see all the time now women lifting each other up and being very supportive of each other. I feel like you can already see the benefits of all of these things.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. And I mean, I think from a personal perspective, and I think a lot of the women in Irish Women in Harmony have said this too, that, like, you know, you kind of felt a little bit isolated beforehand, because especially as a solo artist, you're kind of like in your own little box and you're doing your own thing and you're hoping people like it and you're just trying to put yourself out there. But then you realize that there are all these other women who are doing the exact same thing. And as soon as you come together, it's just like, okay, you've like had this exact same shared experience and now we can just like support each other, which is pretty amazing.
And it's funny because you said, you know, you didn't really think of networking as a thing. I think that also is something that, you know, men are very used to, you know, networking and whether it's in the pub or playing golf or, you know, it's kind of built into, you know, business networks and all of that. So it's interesting, you know, to see that happening in the music industry amongst women now. Well, speaking of your many and wonderful collaborations, Ailbhe Reddy is here. So let's bring Ailbhe in, and we'll, you're going to do the track for us, and we'll chat a bit about it.
Awesome.
Welcome, Ailbhe Reddy.
Thanks for having me.
So, first of all, how did you two meet?
We met through playing with Dahi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'd bumped into each other time and time again.
Brush shoulders.
Yeah, brush shoulders. And then we met. I released a song with Dahi of 2019.
Yeah,
and we
I
would
think
have played loads of gigs together through that and immediately hit it off.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then whose idea was it to do a track together?
Well, I was working on some stuff for my album at the time, and I was kind of looking at doing collaborations, and Ailbhe and I had said we'd always love to do a track together. So I had some tracks that I was working on and I sent them over to her, and this one really resonated with her. So we went from there via WhatsApp and Zoom and phone calls and annoying text messages from me, I'm sure.
Lots of voice notes of what do you think
So
of
many.
Well, and Ailbhe, I should ask you about your own album and personal history, which already came out.
Let's fall into routine. The romance of watching TV. Hearing your broken sleep. Feeling the warmth of your body.
But I didn't realise you'd been nominated for a Choice Prize, so congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. It's very nice.
It's called Personal History.
It is, yeah.
Yes, and is it a personal history?
I mean, kind of, I always think there were no other albums called that, which I just saw a gap in the market. Because I was like, isn't every debut album kind of that?
Yeah.
So maybe you should call your album that as well.
Got it, noted,
Personal
thank you.
History 2.
Yeah. You know, she did her own artwork as well, which is very
Did you?
impressive. Yeah.
I did.
You see, artistic people are artistic.
Yeah. And also, we're all cheap, so we're just trying to like
Yeah.
shave the cost off.
Never said Mulholland Drive and Patricia Arquette.
Well, also in the music, like we were sort of referencing, you really have to be like
Cottage
a little
industry,
cottage
yeah.
industry. You have to kind of
You're doing
do
everything.
everything else or call in favours.
People
Yeah.
are like, how did you get to know how to do animation so well? And it's like, had to. Absolutely had
Yeah.
to do that.
My experience of lockdown, you know, was the first part of it. I was so productive. Did you make use of that?
I did a whole second album for the whole lockdown, pretty much.
And do you know what your second album's going to be called?
Endless Affair, and it's going to be out next year. But I haven't said anything about it yet. But hey, look.
Exclusive.
Hey, breaking news. People will be thrilled.
So, Lynn, tell us about the track.
So the track is called Still Feel. It's a collaboration between myself and Alva.
And it's a summer banger.
It's a summer banger. I should have just said that. It's a summer banger.
We're going to play it loud because this is the closest thing to a field festival gig I've come to all year. So, yeah, well, hopefully later this year there might be some festival outings for it.
That'd be great, yeah.
Yeah, we would love that.
Fingers crossed. All right, let's hear it.
Lying on the bed, the window hangs half open. Summer heat and your song keeps playing. I let the words sting, I let them sing. All to think of you. I still listen to the traffic at night. Stare at the ceiling, your voice keeps singing, and I still feel you sometimes. Still feel you sometimes. Stare at the ceiling, your voice keeps singing, and I I still see the light, I still hear your voice. If I close my eyes, you're still here, here, here. I still see the light, I still hear your voice. If I close my eyes, you're still remember our arms were touching on that train out by the ocean. I let the words swim, I let them sting. All to think of you. I still listen to the traffic at night. Stare at the ceiling, your voice keeps singing, and I still feel you sometimes. Still feel you sometimes. Stare at the ceiling, your voice keeps singing, and I I still see the light, I still hear your voice. If I close my eyes, you're still here, here, here. I still see the light, I still hear your voice. If I close my eyes, you're still
well, we layer in a huge festival crowd. Main stage, like big festival. It's so good.
Very kind.
Yeah, it's so good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It would be so good to be doing it at Electric Picnic or something, wouldn't it?
Yeah, every time we play it or even I listen to it, I'm like, God, I wish we were on stage.
Well, it might be happening. I mean, they're still...
I have hope, yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta have hope.
Thank you so much, Ava. I totally loved that, and I can't wait, hopefully, to hear it at a festival sometime soon.
Same.
I was just laughing to myself as I was bending down there trying to pick up my notes and having difficulty because I've got a whole new shape in lockdown, which I'm now slowly endeavouring to defeat. But you, Elaine, you took up indoor rowing during lockdown.
Yep.
What the hell is that? What does that mean? Like a rowing machine from a gym.
Yeah, we have like a water rower thing. My wife bought it a couple of years ago because we've always really struggled with exercise. We just don't really have any interest, to be honest. Like, I'm not into it. So we bought one with the best of intentions and never really got into it. But then in lockdown, obviously not really been able to leave and do anything, I was like, this is probably a good time to try and get into it. So I have, but what I've actually found really good for is just like my mental health. And like people say that like exercise can like, you know, get your endorphins going and make you feel a bit better. And I never really bought into that, to be honest, but I've discovered that it is actually true. And it has helped me to kind of decompress or like help with stress if I am, you know, feeling a bit overwhelmed or whatever. So I found it pretty useful for that.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't have an indoor rowing machine in me flat because it's not big enough. But, you know, I'm one of those people who I've actually been exercising for ever.
Yep.
So I totally get the endorphins thing.
Yep.
Because like after a long run, you are literally on a high.
Yeah.
And the sweat's pouring out of you and you've got a grin on you and it feels amazing. But to get to that point, you have to go through the effort.
To get to that bloody point,
and
my
if
God.
that's in my living room or spare bedroom or something, there's just no way. I just don't have that sort of dedication to it.
Yeah. I think that's why it actually worked for me, is because it was literally so close to me. It's just like, okay, fine. It's like 6 feet away. It's like eyeballing me. So I'll just like try and do it. So I've definitely enjoyed it for sure. So
yeah, no, that will never work for me. I mentioned in the introduction that the marriage equality referendum kind of changed both our lives because we both ended up getting married. And we're similarly long time married. When is your anniversary?
So, yeah, we'll be 3 years in August.
3 years in August.
Yeah,
congratulations.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's all going well so far.
Good. Well, because it is funny because, you know, like yourself, I was not very long married when lockdown happened, and then you spent 15 months locked into an apartment with somebody. Yeah. So I think it's you know, forging your marriage in the fires of, you know, whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think if you manage that, it'll be all plain.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like we've just become even closer through lockdown, you know. So yeah, there's been good things to it too.
And so, like when the marriage equality thing was happening, obviously I got involved and, you know, was very much behind it and all of that. But in a way, for me, it was an esoteric question in the sense that I very much believed in it from a purely equality perspective, and I felt if there are gay people who want to get married, they should be able to, just like anybody else. Even then, thought I wasn't going to marry, because I was never one of those people who desperately wanted it for myself.
Yeah.
So in a way, I was almost surprised when a few years later I did end up getting married.
Yeah.
Were you similar, or you were saying, no, I definitely want to get married, you know, and therefore I'm going to campaign for the right to?
A bit of both. I mean, I think it was kind of starting to be in my head a little bit more, but I think for like when I was younger, I wasn't really thinking about it at all, and I certainly wasn't like fantasizing about it or anything like that. But I think, you know, as I was kind of getting a little bit older and kind of thinking about that potentially as something for me down the line, you know, I was obviously kind of like, yeah, this is something that I really want to see. But I think, you know, more than anything, if it never happened for me, I just wanted, as you say, for everybody to have that opportunity, you know.
Yeah.
And being on the other side of it now and like having the wedding that we did in 2018, it was just such an amazing day. And I feel like there was even more love and support and everything there because we had been through this really horrible, oppressive, you know, volatile time where our lives were just like on display and being debated like for years. And to kind of, not to be completely on the other side of that, but to be in a much better place and to have that day with our friends and family. And one of our really good friends, Vicky Curtis, who I'm sure you probably know, she's a spoken word artist, and she's got a beautiful poem poem called Two Fat Ducks about the
she did it for us
and
years
she did it
ago,
at her
way
wedding.
back
It was
in
class.
Pantasocracy. Yeah, we love Vicky.
Yeah, she's incredible.
I'd get down on bended knee and proclaim me your wife, because this country I love opened her heart and 1,201,607 people screamed, I'm yours. And you can marry whoever you want and whomever you choose. Doesn't bother me as long as I have this right to say I do too. But on that great day, the 22nd of May, 62% said that love conquers all. And yes, we said yes, they did yes.
So she did it at the wedding for us, and it just felt like a real moment, you know.
Well, also, you know, that thing when parents say, you know, no, I'm not going to buy you a bicycle. You have to work or do the pocket money and save up for yourself, because you don't appreciate something unless you work for it.
Yeah.
In a weird way, I kind of feel like when I got married, I felt like, yeah, I actually worked, for this.
Of course.
Like, I really appreciate what is happening here because, we had to fight to get it.
Yeah.
So I do feel that definitely made it more resonant, emotionally powerful on the day.
Yeah.
Like, I fucking deserve this
Of
because
course.
I worked bloody hard to get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, you were pivotal in that whole thing. And I mean, like, I actually recently just watched The Noble Call again.
People who have never experienced homophobia in their lives, people who have never checked themselves at a pedestrian crossing, have told me that unless I am being thrown into prison or herded onto a...
And, I think from a purely personal perspective, like, you really articulated something that I feel like so many, queer people at the time hadn't even really kind of engaged with properly, like this kind of idea of, of checking yourself, or like that feeling of oppression, like walking down the street and seeing these posters about your life and stuff like that. I feel like you really kind of like, put a kind of shone a light on it, but also kind of articulated it for so many people. And I really feel like there was a kind of a big surge after that of people just coming together. And yourself, like, out on the streets, knocking on doors, and how important that was.
Denounced for using hate speech, because I dare to use the word homophobia. And a jumped up queer like me should know that the word homophobia is no longer available to gay people, which is a spectacular and neat Orwellian trick, because now it turns out that gay people are not the victims of homophobia. Homophobes are the victims of homophobia.
Well, it's also, annoyance or anger can often spur you on to do things, or it actually clarifies your mind sometimes. And so you say exactly what you want to say. So for me personally, that was just one of those things. I had no big notions about it.
Yeah.
I was pissed off.
Yeah.
And so I was saying why I was pissed off. But the other thing that's interesting to me is that the groundwork for the change that happened had been slowly being laid for 30, 40 years by a lot, thousands of different people. And sometimes when it must have felt very lonely, to be doing that kind of work and all that. But then it almost felt like around 2014, 15, it sort of reached a tipping point, and then the change came spilling down. Did you feel that?
I definitely feel like I kind of recognised the work and the difficulty and the pain and strife that had gone before me. And obviously I wasn't kind of a part of that, but like, I definitely remember being, young and, whatever, I think I was, let me again do terrible maths. I was like 9 or 10 when homosexuality was decriminalised, so it definitely felt like there was a journey to get there. And although it happened quite quickly, I suppose in those couple of years, like, as you say, there was decades of work that went before that. And I think I definitely always have kind of, felt aware of that for sure.
But to me, like, it was exciting in the end when it really did seem to just tumble down. Like the change did seem so dramatic, and like, it was exhilarating.
It was.
Majority of votes in favour of the proposal, 467,307.
To see that a country like Ireland could actually change that much, that deeply and that significantly in what felt in the end like a short,
Yeah.
period of time. It was dramatic, and then it's also weird now to be sitting here in Ireland, looking at Hungary and Poland, and I think for an Irish person to be having that feeling is still a relatively new experience,
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting. And so, how is married life?
It's great. Love it. Ideal. Very happy. She's an absolute gem and I'm very lucky.
Go pleasure for no forever. I guess with some kindness and blindness we managed to hold this down.
And she's from Donegal. You're from Mayo, but you're Dublin based.
Yeah, correct.
Is she in the creative industries or?
She's an editor and she'd be kind of big into art and stuff as well, and adores music. So we've loads of things in common.
Now that we're standing on top of the throne, I see you now.
And we have a cat as well that kind of keeps us on our toes as well. I think you have a cat as well, don't you?
I do have a cat as well. And well, I've had a dog for 13 years, Penny, and she's great and all. But Penny's very self-contained and she's not interested in other people. And we ended up getting a cat just after the first lockdown.
Okay.
And my fella really wanted a cat, and I was just, I mean, we'd had cats when we were kids. I like cats. I'm nothing against them, but I didn't. But I've absolutely adored having the cat.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Oh my God, he's just so fun and he's so engaged with everything. He's adorable.
Mm-hmm.
When he wants attention, he's going to get it from you, and that's also cute and adorable too. And so I'm now converted into being a cat lady.
Yeah, like I love dogs as well, but I just feel like cats are, they make you work for it, and they're super independent and like very intelligent. Like our cat's called Juno, and I feel like sometimes she just comes home, but like it's incidental that we're there. Like, what I mean? She's just kind of like, oh, you guys are here, yeah? And kind of just looks for her food and stuff.
Well, I'm not going to say now that cats have overtaken dogs. Okay. I'm just saying that I appreciate them both equally. They bring different things to the table.
That's
and
very true.
Both valid.
For sure.
The last thing I sort of really want to talk to you is about you do a lot of collaborations now and remixes, which I always feel is like from the outside, if I was musical, that is what I would like to do.
Cool.
People give you something that's formed and then they say, bedazzle that bitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, recently you did the track Gay Girls by the Pillow Queens.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love the Pillow Queens.
I love them.
The original track I loved. But your version it's an entirely different beast.
Yeah.
That retains the essence of the first. Well, first of all, how did you get into the remixing thing?
Remixing was actually like a big way for me to kind of get into electronic music, because when I started to learn how to use Ableton, it's a really good way to learn, because you're not like creating anything. You've got some stuff to work with. You've got stems that already exist, so you can kind of drag them in and then play around with them and see if something kind of sparks.
Yeah.
So it was how I kind of learned to really get into it at the start, which was cool. Like I initially remixed some of my own stuff because I didn't have anything else. So I was like, I'll just do these. And then I kind of like started doing some for friends and kind of started doing some for other people. But it's really fun. I actually find it way easier to do remixes than to write, because you have a starting point, you have a foundation. So it's nice in that way, because what you said is so true. I mean, you want to be kind of bringing something new to the table and reinterpreting it, and not in any way kind of tarnishing the original beautiful piece of work that it already was. So I parked that one, and then I moved on to Gay Girls and worked on it for quite some time. But the beautiful vocal, like Pam's gorgeous vocal that I've kind of isolated and made the kind of main piece in that track, is just stunning. Like, and I kind of will look for that in a remix. I will look for something that really kind of just like gets me in my heart, and I'm like, sweet, I'll just like loop that and then try and build some new chords and melodies around that. So that's kind of where that one came from.
some other great ones. You've done one for Loa.
Yeah.
And we're big fans of Loa
God,
here.
she's unbelievable, yeah.
Yeah. And like looking ahead, do you think, is that something that you could just see yourself, doing, producing, or are you always want to be focused on your own music at the core of things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely open to it, but I think for me, it's artist first. It's very much kind of like writing and creating and performing, and then I like doing the remixes and all and that kind of stuff. But ideally, I think it's kind of more a focus on myself. But I'm very open to working with other people as well, as we know.
Well, and also collaborating is fun.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
Yeah, because it can be very, obviously my thing is different, but for years I did the theatre shows totally on my own, and it's fun, and you're working with a director and all that stuff. But it's you don't get the like when you come off the stage and it's just you in your dressing room, and then when you're in a show with other people, the vibe is so much lighter and shared and everything. So.
Yeah, totally. I think it can kind of get you out of your head, and I think doing those collaborations during lockdown as well was such a lifeline, because it was like a reason to chat to people, and like we were just having conversations and getting this stuff done, which was really cool.
So the 2 tracks you've dropped in the last while, they are they're part of an album.
Correct.
So tell me about the album.
So working on finalising that at the moment. Going to have another couple of singles coming out in the next few months, and then hoping to get the album out in October.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because the music industry, again, it's changing so much all the time. And, when I was younger, it was all about the albums and
I know.
everything. And nowadays, everything has to be released in bits, and
it's
a different
You kind of
world.
want to get the worth out of it. Like, sounds a bit reductive, but like, you kind of want to like showcase what you've done, because it's very easy in this modern age when there's just so much stuff and there's so much new music and there's so much noise. So you kind of want to get people to engage and showcase as much of it as you possibly can, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this, so that it doesn't just kind of like come out and then disappear again, because especially when you've put so much work into it,
and things nowadays, because there's so much stuff, things really incredible, beautiful things can slip through the cracks just by accident of the week it was released or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's so hard. Yeah. Which is why you have to feckin' love music to keep at it.
For sure.
Yeah. Anyway, Elaine, it's been a delight and lovely to finally hook up with a fellow Mayo woman.
Yeah.
You're our first guest on the show that's from Mayo. We were thinking back all through Pantisocracy and everything. Now, maybe someone is going to remind me and tell me I'm wrong, but we could not think this morning of anybody else from
awesome.
Mayo.
I feel very honoured.
Thank you. So, yes, I've really very much enjoyed meeting you and swapping cat stories, married stories, and I'm very much looking forward to having the chance to see some live gigs, maybe with you soon.
For
Fingers
sure, hopefully,
crossed.
yes.
Anyway, and thank you to Alvaretti for joining us. You can find all the tracks on Bandcamp. The links will be in the podcast show notes. And you can check out the videos of Elaine and Alva's performance here with us today online, also at pantisocracy.ie. And the videos, as always, made by the talented and beautiful John Howard, who stands quietly observing everything in this place. And so thanks a million. Thank you for listening. That's it from this episode of the Panty Personals, and we'll be back.
That was great. Thank you so much. It was really nice to meet you properly.
Yes, lovely to meet you.
We'll have to meet up in Mayo now. That'll be the next one.
Although, I don't really do North Mayo.